You are doing well.
All right, we're live. Thanksgiving week. How's our how we sound? We sound okay?
You guys sound fine.
Awesome.
Lori, talk to me.
Hi, Joe. How you doing?
Better.
Want to do sound check?
Sound check, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, he's in business.
You're live.
We're live. We're live?
Good to be here.
Really do tests.
You've got 3 minutes to do a pre-show.
3-minute pre-show. We could do that. Let's talk about where we were this past weekend. That's gonna stir a lot of conversation. It's gonna be good.
That's a great idea. Frankie, if you want to pull up the NXT website, this past weekend we went to the NXT Philly Invitational, which was a high school recruiting event for boys. I thought it was a great event. We got there Sunday morning, and it was cool. It was a very cool event. You want to get into who we ran into?
Yeah, we could talk about that in a minute for sure. I think we should talk about why people go to these things, and why they exist during this time of the year. I think one thing we like to discuss is the fact that these big recruiting events, a lot of times are, because people want to play more and they want to compete with their team more and they want to, go out there and beat up on other clubs or whatever. But I think the reality is coaches want to take, another additional opportunity to recruit players. And I think that creates, more events and more chances for people to play, with their teammates for their club or high school, and then go compete against other people. And I think as a result of it, it's actually become a pretty popular season for kids to get recruited and even, find a specific home or a school.
Yeah, definitely. College coaches definitely utilize the fall for recruiting, and in many cases to confirm, what they think about a student athlete. If they definitely want to continue to recruit them, sometimes they mark them off. But unfortunately, it's not the best brand of lacrosse because the kids aren't in lacrosse shape, and they haven't been working as hard on their talents. Like in the summer, they're coming off their spring seasons.
Yeah.
So their level of play is higher.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of injuries too. Like players are going from football or volleyball to lacrosse. They're not prepared. Like you said, they're not in the shape to play that specific sport. And then all of a sudden they think they're in mid-season form and they're not. It creates injuries, which I don't like about it. And it's a little sloppy too. So I think it's tough to really evaluate whether or not a player, is good enough to go to your school. But I also think there's a lot of positive. And some of the things we'll talk about later, you talk about team chemistry building. You get to know new players that join your program. You get to see intangibles on kids and what they're made of. And it's great for networking, which we'll talk about too on the show tonight, people that we ran into at the event. So I think it's about that time, right? 7:30, showing on my iPhone. So
Nice.
let's get going here. So tonight, the title of the show, D1 material, ? So we'll talk about what that means in a little bit. But let's get going and talk about initially our NXT experience. People we ran into, what you got out of the weekend, and what some of those conversations and some of those interactions mean to you specifically.
Well, what was cool about the weekend in Philly was I met a lot of people I didn't know that are very active in the sport, and I also ran into people I already knew, and we got to talk about the game as a whole. And the first guy that I met that I didn't know, if you bring up the Chesapeake Bay website, I got to meet Brendan Kelly, who's the owner of the Chesapeake Bayhawks. And he was, besides being a great guy, it was really informative. We talked about the MLL and the PLL, the new league that Rabel's starting, and his insight was unbelievable, to the point where after speaking to him for about 15 minutes, he was there to watch his son play for, who was his son playing for? He was playing for the Annapolis Hawks. And I said to him, would you be interested in being on our show in the spring? And he said, absolutely. And it was great because he had some insight for the game of lacrosse from the professional eye, while I've always looked at it from the high school student into college. I never really looked at it that way, so I think it would be cool to have him on the show in the future.
Yeah, definitely. And then for people that don't know, lacrosse is an interesting spot when it comes to professional sports. It's not considered a major professional sport. It's not the ML, it's not the major MLS, the major soccer league. It's not the NHL. It's definitely not the NBA or the NFL. or the MLB. But it is something that people are trying to make, as a career where people can aspire to play professional lacrosse and have that be their career path and something that they do for a living. So, the PAL, the new PLL league that's being started up by Rabel is something that's going to have some unique twists to it. That's going to hopefully draw some more eyes to the sport and create more opportunities for people to make a little bit more money and make a career of it. And then it's going to be interesting too because they're not competing against the one and only existing league that was the MLL, which you talked about how Coach Kelly there runs the Bayhawks, which is a very successful organization there. So I agree. That was a pretty cool interaction, and it's cool to see where the sport's going. And people are trying to kind of raise the level of play, raise the opportunities that are existing among within the sport, and hopefully create a little bit more inspiration for the youth, for kids to be like, hey, there's a reason why I'm working so hard at this game. It's because maybe I could do this for a living one day. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, it is cool. And it's funny because he was standing with Coach Petro from Johns Hopkins, which, arguably is one of the most storied college lacrosse, we'll call them franchises, with the history that they have. And Petro was there to recruit, but he was really there to watch his two sons play, his twins, who are freshmen. They play up. They play Coach Petro, who, for those of you who don't know, is the head coach at Johns Hopkins. He had a storied career as a player for Johns Hopkins, arguably considered the greatest defenseman of all time. A Long Island product, was raised in Hicksville, went to St. Mary's High School, which is kind of cool. He's a really unique person to get insight from. And it was cool because he was watching his sons play as a dad, even though he's recruiting. And as his kids were being coached by the coaches, and it's funny because the guy who was coaching his kids is a guy I've known for, he played at Towson with my brother, a guy named Ronnie Klausner. Ronnie Klausner runs a club called Cooper's, does a great job. Ronnie's a character. He's an unbelievable advocate of the sport, loves lacrosse, and he's like an historian. When you talk to him, it's like you're talking to an historian of the game of lacrosse. And it was cool to see Petro on the sideline watching his sons play like a regular dad, even though he's, obviously.
I wouldn't consider him a regular dad because he actually didn't say anything while he was watching his kids. And regular dads, you want to talk bizarre and normal, tend to not stop opening their mouth and not let their coaches, coach. But I thought that was kind of refreshing watching the guy who arguably knows more than anyone else there at this game sitting there with his mouth shut, just enjoying watching his kids, it looked like some pretty good young coaches as well as Ronnie kind of coaching up his kids. So I thought that was pretty cool too.
Yeah, you talk about refreshing. I love that word. Well, and we're going to have, obviously we talked about it in the last episode of Beyond the Game. We talked about the bizarre and normal thing. I mean, Coach Petro sitting on the sideline just watching his boys play and not saying a word, to us is normal. Yeah. To many is bizarre.
Yeah.
It's funny because all you do is hear parents, screaming and yelling things to their kids when they have amazing coaches on the sideline teaching their kids the game.
Sure. No, absolutely. You mentioned one other guy you ran into, Coach John Raba, who's he's the head coach at Wesleyan, which is a Division III school who just won the national championship last year. You've known him, for a while. You want to talk a little bit about what that was like?
It's cool because, I hadn't seen John since he won the national championship. And a couple of years ago, we got to visit Wesleyan on one of our college road tours and built a nice relationship with him. He is what we call a daler. For those of you who don't know what a daler is somebody from Farmingdale. Farmingdale High School, which is obviously here on Long Island, has an unbelievable storied women's and men's high school program. Matter of fact, I think in one of the future episodes we might be getting the Daler head coach Mike Hungerford on the show. And Johnny is a warm, when you
like
hug
a big teddy bear.
When you hug Johnny, he's a big boy. When you hug Johnny, you feel like you're hugging like your best friend, you know. And I was very excited for him. And his son, talk about sons and dads. His son is a freshman at Loyola.
Yep.
And I was asking him how his boy's doing down there playing for Charlie Toomey. But it's cool because he just won his first national championship. He's had that program a while, and he's built an unbelievable program. But more importantly is he's helped so many young men develop and become men and get out into the working world. And I was happy to see him and congratulate him.
Yeah, something we were talking about earlier in the office as we were preparing for the show was just like, what is in the job description of a college coach? And I think, one of the ones that's kind of under the radar for some of the best ones out there, including Coach Reba, is like, how do they help these kids once they graduate from college? Like, is there a network there for them to get some jobs? Are there opportunities for kids to network in different fields and get job experience? And Wesleyan as a school, but also as a lacrosse program, I feel like a lot of kids that come out of there, they're killing it. They're doing a lot of really good things in the workforce, and they're really highly motivated, young, intelligent, student athletes who are killing it, right after they graduate. So I think, that's a credit to him and also the school that he represents and works for. But it's something that's really under the radar.
It's funny, not to interrupt you, but something as you were talking about, because we mentioned Petro earlier, I got to tell a quick story about Coach Petro that has always resonated in my head. When you were a middle schooler, Jim Amon was your athletic director. Jim Amon, for those of you who don't know, was the athletic director at Cold Spring Harbor. Now he's the athletic director at Manhasset High School. He also was a lacrosse coach. Started out as an assistant lacrosse coach at Johns Hopkins. He was the head basketball coach and the assistant. And so he's always had like a really good relationship there. So he invited me and a buddy of mine to Johns Hopkins alumni function in Manhattan. He was going into the city. He asked us if we wanted to go. You guys were like in 7th grade, you and Kev. And that was my buddy's son. And we went to the function, and, it was basically Hopkins alums, all ages, and some young alums and guys that just graduated. And Petro gets up at the end of the night, and he calls up the kid who was the starting goalie the year before, who just graduated from Hopkins, and he puts his arm around the kid, and he turns to the alums, and he says, "This young man needs a job. Can any of you guys help him?" And this is what he studied at Hopkins. And the next day, he had 5 interviews. So to me, when you're looking for a college, you want a man or a woman that's going to help your child. We were talking about Maggie McNamara, who's the LIU post coach today, who just won an IWLCA award for her service. You talk to Meg McNamara, you mention any young lady who played for her, she will tell you what that person is doing. Like I'll say,
like currently,
hey, unbelievable. She knows, they just went for a job interview. The girl's been out of school 7 years.
Right.
She knows that she's getting married. She knows that she's having a baby. She knows everything about her alums. That's such a big, important part of the college experience. Parents need to understand that.
Right.
And then this leads into what the title of this is.
Yeah, D1 material. So I think right now what's happening is you have a lot of boys and girls who are, in particular are juniors in high school, and they're expecting to be recruited by a bunch of these schools, especially the Division I schools. And, for whatever reason, the looks that they wanted to get, the phone calls they expected to receive, the visits they wanted to make, they're not happening. So they're saying, in my Division I material, should I be targeting Division I schools anymore? And I think, from our opinion, the answer to that question is, you can't just think about Division I, because if you do, you're going to drive yourself insane, and you're going to miss potential really good opportunities to go learn and see great programs out there that might have never heard of, or it could be a great coach that you never even knew you'd be able to meet. So I guess for you, like, how do you handle if a boy or girl says, hey, like, I just want to play Division I, that's all I care about, and I want to know if I can play Division I. Like, what do you think?
Well, first of all, when you're picking a college, you can't allow the sport that you want to play in college to tell you where you're going to go to college, because there's so many factors in picking the right college. So if you get caught up with the level of the lacrosse team, and when I say level, I mean Division I, Division II, Division III, or club. And as we know, there are Division III teams that can beat Division I teams. For those of you who don't know that, okay, plenty of them, both on the boys and the girls side. And every high school coach and college coach knows this. The level of lacrosse should never come into play. What should come into play is finding the right fit. You should take lacrosse out of the component. And I've talked about this endlessly. And pick the school that fits you. And when I say fits you, I mean academically, socially, economically, distance, size of school, type of school.
Yeah.
Does it have your major? Do you know what major you want to do? All the things that are important with college.
Yeah, I think talking about bizarre and normal, someone proposed this to us today, and I just wanted to bring it up to the show because I think it's a really good example of talking about playing Division I and talking about bizarre and normal. And here's basically the situation. So I'm a junior and I really want to play Division I lacrosse. No Division I school has reached out to me to go make a visit. Division III schools who fit my academic profile and it might be a nice fit for me are recruiting me. And they want me to come on campus and they want me to visit. These are Division III schools and a couple of D2s. I don't want to look at it because I want to play Division I. So I'm passing up on opportunities to go visit these other schools. A lot of them I've never even heard of. They're Division II and III because I really want to play Division I. The fact that I'm passing up these opportunities, is that bizarre or normal to you?
Well, unfortunately, it is what families are doing. It is bizarre because, I mean, you're going to pass up an opportunity to visit Amherst, Middlebury, Wesleyan, MIT, Skidmore. These are amazing universities, okay? Because you think you're a better lacrosse player, so what, you're going to go to a school that doesn't fit you academically? You could just because they're Division I? You're going to make the decision because you want to play Division I lacrosse and you're going to go to a school that doesn't fit you academically? I mean, would you go to a school like that doesn't have engineering if you want to be an engineer? I mean, what you have to do is you have to take your ego and put it on the side and visit everything. And first of all, you got to educate yourself. How do you know you don't like a school? How do you know?
Well, I've never heard of it.
Okay, well, then educate yourself. There's a lot of things you haven't heard of. I mean, part of life is learning things. I learn things every day. I'm 57 years old. So a 16-year-old, there's a lot of things they don't know. But that's what college and high school is for you, and life experiences. Live it. You don't have to go to the school, meaning just because you visit it doesn't mean you have to attend that school.
But I don't know what I want to do when I'm older, but I know I'm really good at lacrosse and I could play Division I. So why should I look at these D2 and III schools that, I've never heard of, and I don't even know if there's things I want to study there, and then they're beneath me.
Well, first of all, when you say beneath you, I think what you're saying is that you don't think the level of lacrosse is good. You're much better than. And like I've said before, I'll give you an example. Salisbury University is a Division III school, okay? They could beat, in a game, probably 40% of the Division I schools. So when you say the lacrosse component, then you're not educated on the lacrosse part of it. The lacrosse side of it, you know that from experience. You played in high school with a lot of your friends who played at Division III, and they were as good as you were. You played at Division I. So that's ridiculous. I think the ego component is what's screwing it up, and I think people get caught up in that. I think what you have to do is evaluate your kid and what kind of kid you have and what he or she wants to study and the size of the school. And also, you should know what's going to work best for your kid, and the college experience. We're talking to a young lady today. She wants to go to a school, with like a big football program. Well, if she's not getting recruited there's only like 10 or 12 schools in Division I that has that. But there's tons of club schools that have that. If that's what's going to be the best college experience for her and give her the opportunity, she's got to look at the Clemsons, the Florida States, the Arizona State now has Division I. Those types of schools that have club, because she's not going to get recruited by the Division I schools, but she wants that experience.
Sure. I thought what was most interesting as we talk about this topic, which came from Bob Schmidt, who's one of the directors in our program, because he had not only helped a lot of girls through the recruiting process with us and the club he started, but with his daughter and his son, who is a big-time wrestler. He talked about the idea of covering ground. And covering ground means just go see and use these coaches who are recruiting you as opportunities to see as many schools as you can so you can educate yourself. Because that firsthand experience that you see when you go step on a campus is invaluable. And you learn so much through the perspective of a coach and through an athletic program. So I think the more ground you cover and work as a family together, I think it could result in a more educated, accurate decision on where your son or daughter can go to school. Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense. I think everybody, you got to be an educated consumer when you're looking at schools. The other thing is the cost. You got to evaluate the cost and what you can afford. So you got to do your homework there too.
Yeah. So if anyone has questions about this or has comments as it relates to Division I or what your kid should be, where they should go, these are things to ask us and talk about because it's a pretty interesting time as it relates to it. So you cringe. I was like, oh no.
Mike, you must have a friend named Tom Corcoran.
Yeah, Tommy Corkin, he's
Yeah,
the West
he's,
Islip
he's
High
giving you
School
like
varsity coach.
A big thumbs up. He said, all kids should hear this right now.
Well, we'll make sure they do hear it, right?
Yeah, we just gotta do a better job marketing the show. That's on me. I'll get the word out a little bit better. Coach Cork can help us though.
Well, Tommy Corkin, just so you know, Tommy Corkin, who is an Ithaca College alum, and that's where I went, and I've gotten to build a relationship with that fine man who's going to help keep West Islip at the top of the heap.
We'll have a good year. We'll
Yep.
definitely have a good year.
Taking
ahead.
over for Scotty Craig.
Yeah.
I think
he's that in particular. You talk about West Islip, right? If you're born in West Islip and you get a lacrosse stick in your hand, the dream is to play at the highest level, right? These kids want to play Division I lacrosse. That's what it is. But not every one of the kids that plays lacrosse in West Islip, who goes off and plays in college, plays Division I. And I guarantee those same kids are probably having just as successful, if not more successful careers, not just in college, but after college, than some of the biggest stars that have come out of West Islip and gone on to play Division I. And it's that way for a lot of programs that, have really, established programs that win and have kids that really want to play at the highest level. So I think, there's a lot to be said for that, whether it be a public school or a private school. So.
Yep, so I think it's very important that parents evaluate their child and find the best possible opportunity for them.
You want to talk about why Thanksgiving's the best holiday?
Yeah.
I think one of the best lines I've heard so far about why Thanksgiving's the best is from Rory, who Rory Sadoff works with us at FLG. She coaches in our program. She's a pretty awesome person. She's like, here's why Thanksgiving's the best holiday. There's no gifts. I was like, that's a beautiful thing right there. I've never thought about it that way. She's like, it takes all the bullshit out, and you just think about being with your family, being with some old friends, sitting around and having a good meal, hanging out, reconnecting. Lori's got some, you have friends in town right now, right? Which is pretty cool, during one of the best weeks of the year. And that's really what this week's all about. And I think, when you kind of remove the material side of things, you kind of dive a little bit deeper into what's most important, which is your friends and your family. So I thought that was a pretty cool line that Rory said. And there's obviously other reasons too, which we talked about today.
Turkey.
Well,
The food's good.
For some people, yeah. No, so in the office today, right? The sides are great though. I love the sides. We had some alumni come back to the office today, which is pretty cool in Huntington. They stopped by. We had, old interns that worked with us and are continuing to work with us. They came by. And then, I never experienced this, but I got to imagine as a parent who has a kid that's playing or just attending college to come back for the first time, in sometimes 6 to 8 weeks is a pretty nice feeling, as a parent. So I think that's a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to Thanksgiving because I get to go over to my brother's house and get to see all my family, all my one niece and I have a lot of nephews, and they're all in either college or in the working world, and I don't get to see them a lot. Mm-hmm. So that's my opportunity to give them a hug and spend some time with them, find out what's going on in their lives, and I think that's really, really important. It's funny because I think I gave Frankie a picture of when I was a kid, which is a long, long time ago, and I hung out with a group of guys. We used to call them they used to call us the fellas, and this is a picture of when I think it was my junior or senior prom, and all my buddies. And I get together with those guys at least once a year. This May will be 40 years I'm out of high school, and there's 8 of us. And I was thinking about this. I'm a lacrosse guy. I'm in the lacrosse world, but what we all had in common is we all played on the football team together. Some of the guys played baseball. One of the guys is a great golfer, was the star of our golf team, but we all played football together. So it wasn't necessarily lacrosse that brought us all together, but it was football. It was a sport, and I mean, that picture says it all. And you could talk about some of the girls' teams that we met and some of the quality young ladies.
Well, when you talk about friendships, you know, if you want to pull up the ESM girls who were in our office the other day, those are the 4 young ladies there sitting on the couch. So, you know, I think one of the beautiful things about this sport is the friendships that are developed through it. And, you know, one thing that we do that's pretty cool now is we'll bring in some of the top high school programs into our office, and we get to just talk a little bit about those top players. We get to talk with the coaches. You know, we get to learn about their story, and we get to learn a little bit about like when they started playing and, you know, how they became friends with one another. And I think, you know, ESM and Northport were really good examples of a really tight group of seniors who are probably going to be really successful this year, not just because they're great lacrosse players and their programs are run by great people in Becky Thorne and Carol Rose, but those girls are probably pretty tight friends off the field. And they've been friends ever since they were, you know, younger. I remember Sophie mentioned her dad coached the 5 Northport girls along with the rest of the girls in their class growing up. So, you know, they've known each other since 2nd or 3rd grade. That one girl who mentioned she started lacrosse a little bit late, she started in like 4th grade.
Yeah.
And in Northport, that's definitely behind the times a little bit. But
well, one of the cool things, I got to tell you something. One of the cool things about meeting these amazing high school coaches and their leaders, I'll tell you one thing that I thought was awesome. So Carol Rose, who we're going to have on the show in the springtime, who won her 400th game last year, and she could be one of the biggest names in high school girls lacrosse in the country. Easily. And has done an unbelievable job, not just with the Northport program, but with her Yellow Jacket Club program. She told us the way they pick their captains, I thought the way they pick their captains is the coolest way. They have, if you want to be a captain, at the end of your junior year, they get all the kids that want to be captains, and they have to get up in front of the whole team, including the seniors that are graduating, and give a speech. And then the team votes, including the seniors, on, you know, and last year, you know, they picked 5 captains, but they had more than 5 girls get up and speak. One, it's great because it shows, you know, your leadership, shows your peers, your leadership qualities. Obviously, the girls know each other. But more importantly is you're teaching these young ladies, you know, to say, if you want something, prove it, show it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And, I mean, I think it also probably pulls some of the girls out of their shells if they're quiet.
yeah, I think to vocalize something that is really important to you, I think is important and is a lesson in itself. And I think it's a really good learning experience. And I think, you know, if you really want something and you want other people to know that you want something, sometimes you do have to step out of your comfort zone and prepare for that. You know, that's not something that you can always just get up and do. Some girls might be able to, some guys might be able to just get up and speak from the heart effectively. But I think that's something you got to definitely prepare for. And I think if you can really show people that's what you want, I think you deserve the right to be in a leadership role, whether it be on a team or a company. So I agree. I thought that was a really unique thing I've never heard of that is awesome. And that's probably why they have some great leaders coming out of that program, especially. So,
Well, I definitely, what made that experience special when we had Becky's girls from ESM and Carol's girls from East Northport is you get to meet these amazing athletes and really get to know them and really, you know, I mean, obviously we know them as players on the field. Now we know them as young ladies. And, I mean, those are 2 programs that it's not a surprise that they're successful.
yeah, exactly. And it makes you want to root for them. And we will, and we'll continue to promote them and the girls within it. So that was pretty cool. You want to talk about the Mike Pigari Foundation now?
Yeah, I'd love to talk about Mike.
So I want to mention who Mikey P, or do you want to maybe real quick before we get to Mikey P, you want to talk about what's happening now that fall recruiting's over?
Yeah, I want to touch about for those out there on the girls and the boys side, now that those November weekends are over and you're not playing with your club or high school team, there is still opportunities in the month of December to get seen, and there are different prospect days or showcases at various schools. One of them is the Hoboken Shootout for the boys side. Frankie's going to pull up the website, but there's colleges running these type of showcases throughout the country. So you can still go play on weekends in December at these events and showcase your abilities.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we have something on our website. We have like a calendar. You could check out the calendar on the FLG Lacrosse website if we have it up there. If not, go to the school that maybe you're interested in, check out their website and try to find it. So that way you can go, showcase your abilities.
Yeah, and there's some events too, right? Including the Hoboken Shootout. You might have 20 schools there. So you're going to a school, you're going to experience what it's like to, play on their field, tour campus, but you're also getting exposure from 15 to 20 schools. So
Yeah, Hoboken has like 15, 20 schools there.
So December is a good recruiting time. It's pretty cool.
You should also be working on your highlight film.
Yeah.
Just a little tidbit that we tell our boys and girls. You played all that lacrosse in November, put together a highlight film, put it up on your profile, wherever profile you use, and let the coaches know. Email the coaches that, and that'll build some, coaches that'll be reaching out to you about your abilities.
Cool.
Want to talk about Mikey?
Yeah, definitely.
So Mikey P is a young man that unfortunately passed away in his senior year of college. He went to Pace University. Mikey was, besides that, I've known Mikey probably since he's 6, 7 years old. Mikey was the lacrosse player that just loved the game. I'll never forget his dad telling me they went to the famous Cornell-Albany game. It was a quarterfinal game, and the sound of the crowd used to get Mikey excited about the game of lacrosse. Mikey was a counselor at our camp. He was the best counselor to this day we've ever had. He would literally, if he had 30 kids in his group, he loved Disney. He would name every one of the kids a Disney character. By the end of the week, they didn't have real names. They were whatever. They were grumpy. They were one of the Disney characters. Obviously, Coach Wink's not up on the new ones, but the reality is that Mikey was that counselor. And in our camp, we have a counselor. We have a camper of the day and a camper of the week, and we do it in honor of Mikey. And we have a beautiful picture of him when he played at Pace. And all the kids this year signed it, that made camper of the day, and we frame it for mom and dad. There's a Bowl-orama that they do. This is the 10th anniversary, and it's the Friday after Thanksgiving at Bowl 300 on 110.
We have the website there. I think it's next to the Hoboken one to the left.
Yeah.
Yeah, it might be hard to read the details, but you'll see. It's got this Friday. It's got the bowling Bowl-orama.
It's great. They
fundraiser.
got great baskets. I mean, they had baskets. I mean, I think Joy, my sister, won the trip to Florida last year.
Oh yeah, that's right.
They have amazing things, and they raise great money. And it's funny, but they take this money and they put it to such good use. I mean, they help so many kids out with the money they raise in Mikey's honor.
Yeah, their mission for the Mike Bigari Foundation is essentially to have youth sports be a vehicle to help kids and create opportunities, and that's why it's pretty cool. The sweatshirt that you're wearing, Harlem Lacrosse, does exactly that. And the Mike Bigari Foundation, has made a very generous donation to help them out, and just to kind of show you what Harlem Lacrosse has done. If you want to pull up the picture of Solomé, who's going to now going to Hobart, a kid who started in Harlem Lacrosse, didn't pick up a stick until the Harlem program gave him one, and he started playing for his school. Eventually went to a prep school, kept working really hard in the classroom, kept working athletically, and now he's going off to play for one of the best Division I, lacrosse programs out there in the country. So, Harlem Lacrosse, literally from start to finish, is creating opportunities for some of these student athletes in these different cities throughout the country to not only get them a solid high school education, maybe even get into a private school for some players, but even get into some of the best colleges, and eventually they're going to get jobs once they graduate, just because, one, because of the type of kids, they are, but also the networks that they're going to be a part of now, and the fact that, these kids work so hard and they're so good. So it's pretty cool to see the success of it, and it's really awesome what the Mike Bigari Foundation has done to help Harlem Lacrosse during this time of the year. So
yeah, and if anybody wants to, they can obviously go on to the Harlem Lacrosse or the Mikey P Foundation website and donate. The Harlem Lacrosse organization is obviously very near and dear to us. We work very closely with them to help their student athletes, that aspire to play at the next level. And I think it's something that if anybody that's watching this should definitely go check them out. And it's an unbelievable organization, really, really helping young men and young women.
Yeah, it's Harlem lacrosse is not something that's just flyby. They don't just build something and then move on. They build something and they sustain it, and they hire really professional, mature, at times experienced, sometimes inexperienced, but highly motivated young men and women to lead elementary, middle school, and high school lacrosse programs, and also teach and mentor kids in the schools. And they're just creating so much great opportunity for students who that's all they need is opportunity. And then once they get it, they're flourishing. So Harlem Lacrosse is a great program and organization. So this is a great time of the year to not only give a shout out and give thanks to people who have helped you along the way, but also it's a good time to give. If you've had a good year so far, you have a passion for lacrosse and you like what Harlem Lacrosse is doing, you should definitely go on their website and donate, because it's gonna impact someone's life in a positive way. So it's pretty cool. All right, so we're kind of starting to wrap up here. If anyone has any last comments or questions, now's the time to kind of type those in, dial them in, and I think being that it's Thanksgiving, we're pretty excited to take a day or two off and enjoy it. We'll be back though next week, as always, to continue to talk a little bit more about Long Island High School lacrosse and some of the other related topics that are coming up as it relates to recruiting, some of the guests that are going to be on the show in future weeks. We're going to be continuing our segment on Bizarre and Normal, and we are going to continue featuring some, we can call them unsung heroes or non-for-profits that are doing a good job out there in the lacrosse or youth sports world, like Harlem. We definitely want to give more, we want to give more props, and we want to promote more people that are doing great jobs, not necessarily for the sake of making money, but for the sake of just helping other people. So that's kind of why we wanted to bring up Harlem Lacrosse today, and we will continue to bring up other organizations like them in the future.
Yeah, I want everybody to have a happy Thanksgiving, and we hope everybody has somebody that they can spend the Thursday with and enjoy, and God bless.
You guys have a very nice Thanksgiving also.
Thank you.
You too, Laura.
We will.